What's up, guys? This is a history over the President Bill Clinton, and he's obviously the dude who re-revolutionized the Democratic Party, and let's get into why. A little background on Clinton. His actual name is William Jefferson Clinton. He was born on August 19th, 1946, in a small town called Hope, Arkansas. Interesting fact: his father actually died before he was born, so his grandparents took care of him for the first 2 or 3 years of his life while his mom attended nursing school in New Orleans. His In 1950, his mother married Roger Clinton, who became Bill's stepfather, but they later divorced because his dad was an abusive drunk. So, during his college time, he attended Georgetown University until 1968. He studied in foreign science and foreign services. He was given the Rhodes Scholar to attend Oxford University, but that changed because he got a draft notice, and then he dropped out of Oxford and joined the ROTC. And that got him out of his draft duty. But he resubmitted his draft just for, I guess, out of guilt, I guess. And then he was never called up to serve though because his draft lottery was too low. And then after that, he decided to attend Yale University to study law, and then there he met his wife Hillary Rodman, or as you know her now, Hillary Clinton. This is just kind of a cool picture of him shaking hands with JFK from he got to meet him because of his political stuff that he did in high school. It's kind of symbolic because it shows passing the torch between two generations of Democrats. Kind of cool there. His political background: after he graduated Yale, he became an Arkansas law professor. And then a year later, he challenged Republican John Paul Hammerschmidt for his spot on the House of Representatives, but he lost that election. And then in '76, he was elected to the Attorney General spot of Arkansas. He basically ran unopposed. He won pretty easily. And then in 1978, he became the governor, and became the youngest governor in the country at the time at age 32. And then in 1980, during re-election at the time, senators only had 2-year terms, but that's kind of an important fact. But he was defeated by Frank D. White, but he was able to rebound and defeat White in 1982 after working for a law firm, and then he defeated White, and then he held the governor's spot until 1992 when he became president. So that leads us to the big story, his presidency. In 1992, he easily won the Democratic nomination, facing only one real challenger, and that's Governor Jay Brown of California, but he really easily defeated him, and he won 50% of the party's votes. That's a huge total for a non-incumbent, given the amount of challengers he had and the good challengers he had. Then his election challenges: he would face a very tough election because he'd be facing George H. Bush, the current president. And this is a huge challenge for Clinton because the Democrats don't really have any big leadership right now. Like, they don't have any incumbents that are alive at the time other than Jimmy Carter, but Jimmy Carter's still hated from being killed by Reagan in the election, so he doesn't do much. Whereas Bush, he's able to campaign. Reagan's campaigning for him, Gerald Ford's campaigning for him, Nixon's campaigning for him a little bit. So he's got like 3 incumbents backing him up. He's also got the fact that he's the incumbent. Bush had a couple small downfalls. He had the fact that he broke his campaign promise in 1988 and he raised taxes. That kind of ticked off his conservative base. And then he had the bad economy at the time, but again, the economy really wasn't bad in the great essence compared to what it is like when Obama was reelected. So you can still win re-election with a bad economy, but the fact of the matter, what really kills Bush and opens the door for Clinton is the entry of Ross Perot, the billionaire, and since Bush raised the taxes on people, a lot of conservatives went to go vote Ross Perot because they got tired of Bush and they wanted something changed from the last 12 years of Republicans. But this election is huge because there's 3 Republican blowouts before this, and then Clinton's able to basically rewrite the electoral map for the Democrats and basically win in a blowout instead of having been beaten in a blowout. That's huge for a Democrat. He also moves the Democrats towards a more moderate stance, back to where they were under FDR, sort of like a Southern Democrat moderate stance, versus what Jimmy Carter sort of took him down to the Northern liberal stance. So that's kind of huge. It brings the Democrats back to moderation as well. And then, as a result, Clinton wins the '92 election in a landslide. He wins 370 electoral votes. This helped him to reshape the Democratic Party, as I already said, from the 1980s liberals to the new Democrat moderate. And then he also won states that before Democrats could only dream about winning, and I'll show you those states here in a minute. But as you can see, this is the map in 1988. Like, Bush just annihilates Michael Dukakis and wins a ton of states, and all the states he wins are very Republican turf, like Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, California, the upper Northeast with Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and then New Jersey. Democrats don't generally win that, even in this time, even before this, Democrats don't really win that, and then Clinton helps change that by redoing the electoral map, and he helps turn every state, with the exception of New Hampshire, beyond Pennsylvania, in the Northeast to like hardcore Democrat turf after this, which is huge. He also flips Michigan. Michigan's very Republican up until this election, as was Illinois, and he helps flip those to Democrat. And then California is the big story, because California, since Eisenhower, really, it's only won by Democrats one time, and that was by Lyndon B. Johnson, and it's very Republican, and he helps to flip that. And he also gets the more traditional Democrat states back to the Democrat side with the South. He wins a couple southern states in this election, like he wins Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Georgia, which again, that's huge. I mean, that's not a big surprise because that's traditional Democrat turf, but now, I mean, given what Bush did, that's huge to win the South. But anyway, so as you can see, all the states in blue are going to be the states that Bush wins, and then all the states in red are the states that Bush wins in the 92 election. So as you can see, Clinton cuts his total down a lot. And then in the Midwest, that's a big surprise, because before, the Midwest is very Republican, like Montana, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico. Those never go Democrats, and he flips New Mexico to big time blue turf from now on, as well as California and the Northeast, which is huge for Democrats because that helps them to easily win the 2008 and 2012 election, because he helps keep these states blue, and then Bush isn't able to get any of them to take any of them back. And he also flips Illinois, which that's again a very huge gain for the Democrats because of the electoral value. And yeah, so very big election for the Democrats, very huge rebound, because if you looked at this election in 91, it looked like Bush was going to be handed it, but Clinton makes a huge comeback and is able to win the election and get Democrats in power for the first time in 12 years. So again, very huge. And it's a very good time for the Democrats, but that kind of changes because of Clinton's policies, and let's get into that. His first term is going to be devoted to passing social legislation as well as a couple of economic bills, but he puts through a lot of social legislation, more liberal social legislation that's not very popular, because you got to remember this is still very conservative times. Like the 1980s and the early 90s, it's very conservative up until like 97 or so, and the more progressive era sets in. But for the first half of Clinton's term, the Democrats control the House and the Senate, and so he can get through pretty much whatever he wants, except for the universal health care bill, which I'll talk about in a second. But the first thing he does is he puts a tax increase on all classes, which he said he was going to do in his campaign, that he was going to raise taxes to help balance the budget, and then he's going to make major cuts to defense that Reagan raised. His argument was it's peacetime, we don't need all this defense spending, we're going to cut it. But the tax increases, that's very unpopular, because Reagan made it very popular to keep taxes low and the economy would do well. And since the economy was kind of struggling still at the time, Clinton became kind of unpopular for raising the taxes. And then to add to it, he throws gun control into the mix. And again, it's very conservative times, and the gun control is not going to be popular at all. The Brady bill, that was unpopular, but that could have slid if they'd stopped there. What really hurt them was the assault weapons ban. It basically outlawed about 30 different types of rifles, and the magazine, it limited magazine capacity to like 10 or something. Like, you couldn't sell anything beyond that. Even though it was only enacted for 10 years, it was extremely unpopular, and it kind of turned the NRA against Democrats from that point on. And it really affected the House elections in the 94 midterm, which we're about to see. And then his biggest failure is going to be the Universal Health Care Act. It's basically a more liberal version of the Affordable Health Care Act passed under Obama. It's meant to try and control more. The bill was extremely unpopular because the citizens felt that the government was intruding too much on their personal freedoms, like with health care and everything. And so as a result, it failed in Congress, even though the Congress was Democrat at this time. And the bill was dead in September 94. But that's very big because it's right before elections when it dies off.